Okay, in this video, I'm going to look at why we build buildings like this, at least in my part of the world. So what we have here is a mixed-use building. So on the main floor, there's going to be commercial uses. It could be probably some restaurant uses, certainly some mercantile uses, could even be office and business and personal services. And the upper floors will be residential, so multifamily residential. So this is a very common way to build this is to do concrete up to and including the second floor, and then do the light wood frame construction above. And so why I'm looking at this is because somebody had asked me on a particular project, why are we doing concrete? Do we have to do concrete? Could we just do it out of wood? So let's take a look at a project and see if that's possible, because it might be possible in some cases, but might not be possible in other cases. And so there could be other reasons why we would build this way, even let's just say we found out if wood's permitted. There could be other reasons why, like, you kind of have a built-in fire rating with the concrete and whatever. But I'm just going to look at this from a building code perspective, just to help people weed their way through the building code for such a thing. Okay, so this is the project I have. So main floor is all commercial uses, and then the lobby for the multi-family residential above. So we have a 4-story building right here, and the building area is roughly, I got 1960.03, so I'm going to say 2,000, let's just say 2,000 square meters. Now remember, when you're taking building area, it's like the shadow the building would cast on the ground. So I should be including all these balcony overhangs in here as well. I just didn't. I just drew a quick rectangle just to get a rough idea, but I'll be around that 2,000 mark. So if you're doing this, for an actual set of drawings, get the exact building area. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is go to the building code. So I'm going to use the British Columbia Building Code because this project that I'm looking at is in British Columbia. And I'm going to go to Division B, Acceptable Solutions, and I'm going to go to Part 3. So I know this is a Part 3 building. I know it's not Part 9, and one of the reasons I know that is because it has restaurants in it, which is an A2. And so I believe I have a video kind of talking about when to use Part 9 versus Part 3. But anyways, if you have an A2 use, you're automatically in Part 3. Another item too is if you're over 600 meters squared in building area, then you're going to be using Part 3 as well. And we were closer to 2,000 square meters, so I know I'm in Part 3. Okay, and where I want to go is Section 3.2, building fire safety. And we're going to want to go to 322 to kind of figure out if we can build this whole thing out of wood. But before we go there, I'll just do a refresher here. I do have videos for this, but let's just, I'll just quickly go through this. So in 322, if we go to multiple major occupancies, or sorry, 3224, buildings with multiple major occupancies, it's saying that, and sentence 2 here is just if you have more than one major occupancy, which we have. So remember, we have a group A2 for the restaurants, we have a group E for the mercantile, we have, let's just say, potentially group D for maybe some office or business and personal services, and we also have the group C for the residential above. And actually this building has a parkade as well, so potentially we could have an F3 as well, but there is an opportunity to remove that parkade, and I could show that as well. I'm going to assume that we're going to remove the F3 for the purposes of this. So if we have more than one major occupancy, then the articles 3225 to 3228 apply. So 3225 is applicable building height and area. So this is the important one. So in determining the fire safety requirements of a building in relation to each of the major occupancies contained therein, the building height and building area of the entire building shall be used. Okay, so that's really important. So of the entire building. Okay, so what that's saying is, even though we have an A2 in this building, a restaurant. So even though the restaurant's only on the main floor and only taking part of that main floor, there's actually a restaurant on the other end too. It's still, this is a 4-story A2 building, and it's a 2,000 square meter building area, A2 building area. And then when you have multiple major occupancies, this sentence here is just telling you that you find basically the major occupancy that is the most restrictive, that has the most safety requirements basically, and you apply that to the whole building. But there's going to be a bit of a caveat to that, and we'll come back to that later. Well, maybe I'll touch on it now. We actually have a superimposed major occupancy, so let's come back to that in a minute. So next, I'm going to start going through 322 and figure out for each occupancy whether combustible construction is permitted. So let's start with the group C, because we already know in these buildings that generally speaking, the group C or the multi-family residential stuff, the group C stuff is light wood frame. So let's just check that. So I'm going to go to group C's, and I'm going to start at the bottom of the group C's, because again, it starts with the least restrictive and works its way up to the most restrictive. So the first one here is a group C up to 3 stories sprinklered. Well, we're 4 stories. Sorry, we're 4 stories. So that one doesn't work. Next one is group C up to 3 stories, not sprinklered. That one doesn't work. We're more than 3 stories. 3 stories again, doesn't work. 4 stories, sprinklered. So if your building is not more than 4 stories in building height, if it's sprinklered, it has a building area not more than 1,800 square meters if 4 stories in building height, then you could be combustible or non-combustible construction. But we are actually more than 1,800 square meters. We were closer to 2,000. So that's not going to work. So let's go up to the next one here. Okay, so at a group C up to 6 stories sprinklered. So I know we're only 4 stories, but we can still use this article here if it works. So sprinklered again, up to 6 stories. We're only 4, so that's fine. I'll actually have to check my height. Okay, I just checked, and that building is only about 16 meters high. But anyways, it has a height not more than 18 meters, measured between the floor of the first story and the uppermost floor. So it's actually not the full building height. It's just from the first story floor to the top of the top story floor. But anyways, I meet that as a building area of not more than 2250 if 4 stories in building height. So we're okay there. I'm going to assume we're okay. Again, I did a really, really rough measurement, but I think it'll be fine. And so we are permitted to build this thing out of combustible construction or non-combustible construction. So the group C now, it works that we could build this building out of combustible construction of wood. So if the whole building was just C, that's fantastic. It's not. So let's check the other ones now. So now let's go to the, let's do the A2. And by the way, the A2 is actually down here, and it does occupy more than 10% of the floor area. So it is not what we call a minor occupancy. It's because it's more than 10%, then we have to count it. Okay, so we're A2 for that, and so we're A2 1 story, we're more than that. We're more than 2 stories, more than 2 stories, more than 2 stories, A2 up to 6 stories. So in this case right here, building has to be sprinklered again, and the building shall be of non-combustible construction. So from an A2 perspective, from a 2,000 square meter, 4-story A2, we are not allowed to build this building out of wood. So So we already know that at least part of this building can't be built out of wood. And as of right now, the way I've left it hanging is the whole building shouldn't be. But we have discovered that the group C, would permit the wood, but the A2 wouldn't. Let's just check E just for fun, just to see what happens. And maybe we'll do D as well, actually. So let's take a look at D. So if we were doing D, we'll start off at the bottom here. So D is more than 2 stories, more than 2 stories, more than 3 stories, more than 3, group D up to 4 stories. So as long as you're sprinkler, not more than 4 stories, and it has a building area not more than 3,600, so we're actually okay. So this would work. And this one permits combustible or non-combustible. So the group D, if you only had group D on the main floor, and then your group C is above, then for sure would be fine at this point for the whole building. Now let's take a look at the E just for fun. So group E, I'll start at the bottom again. So we're more than 2 stories, more than 2 stories, more than 3 stories, more than 3 stories, and group E up to 4 stories sprinklered. So not more than, okay, in that 1,800 square meter building area, so we were over that, so that one doesn't work. So we're into 32264. And this one here is saying you shall be of non-combustible construction. So it's not permitting any combustible construction. So the group E and the group A2 are forcing non-combustible construction. The group C and the group D are not. So I'm just going to zip back up here to the start of this, to this section, the 322. And I should actually mention here on the way that, you know, the developer knows they're building the upper floors as wood. Like that's just the entire project's kind of, the performer has been based on that. So, so why is that? If we have an A2 telling us that we have to do non-combustible construction, or if we have group E's telling us we have to do non-combustible construction, why is it that we can do this and do non-combustible on the main floor and then the combustible construction above? Because remember, it said here that the safety requirements of a building in relation to each of the major occupancies contained therein, the building height and building area of the entire building shall be used. So we did that. We used the entire building, the 4 stories and the 2,000 square meters. And then we went to 3226 and it says, okay, well, if you have more than one major occupancy, the most restrictive major occupancy shall apply to the whole building. Okay, so we've already discovered that the A2 and the E are more restrictive because they don't allow any combustible construction. But the key is this 3227 right here. So we have a superimposed major occupancy. So we have group C's above those group E's, A2s, and D's. And so in this one here, you know, there's some except as provided bys, and one of those is that 10% rule I was talking about, but I know we don't meet that. But what's important here is that it kind of explains what a superimposed major occupancy is. So in a building in which one major occupancy is located entirely above another major occupancy, that's what we have. We got the group C entirely over and above the other ones. The requirements in this subsection for each portion of the building containing a major occupancy shall apply to that portion as if the entire building were of that major occupancy. So the magical word here is portion. Okay, so the A2 and E are only occupying the main floor of the building, that portion of the building. And so that is how we end up getting something like that. Now, in this building, certainly the main floor could be built out of steel construction as well, because that would be non-combustible construction. But basically that 3227 is saying, okay, well, we got to do non-combustible for the A2s and the E's. So we're going to do non-combustible on that main floor for that portion of the building. And then sentence 2 talks about that the fire rating requirement between the major occupancies. And then because of that superimposed major occupancy section, you can do the combustible construction above. And just to wrap this up, the reason I didn't look at F3 is because I am just going to assume for the purposes of what we're doing here, let's see if I can find it, right here, 3212, storage garage considered as a separate building. So as long as the parkade, the storage garage is a parkade, you can consider that a separate building if you meet all these requirements here. And usually that's used in this case because the parkade's built out of concrete, you generally meet all these rules anyways, the 2-hour ratings and stuff like that. So I'm just going to assume that's being used. However, I could assume it's not and then go back down to 322. Let's just do it just for fun. Let's just see what happens if we looked at this entire building as an F3. Okay, F3, so we're more than 1 story, more than 1 story, more than 2 stories. And again, I'm looking at the whole building. So we're a 4-story building, and sprinkler not more than 4 stories, has a building area not more than 3,600. So that's fine. And so as an F3, actually, the combustible construction is fine as well. So there you go. Anyways, that's how it's done. Hopefully somebody finds that of interest.